Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to continue working on the analyzer that I have built and tested in the previous two videos. In the last video I have created a failing test, and in this video I will make this test pass by using what is called the semantic model. So in this video you will be introduced to the semantic model and you will see how it can be used. Okay, this is the failing test. And to remind you, in this test we use the full name of the immutable array type, and that was the reason why the test failed. And in the creation analyzer we created in the first video, we only handled the case where the immutable array type is used directly like this. Okay, let me debug the test to show you exactly why it fails. I'm going to create a breakpoint here and let me debug the test. So when we wrote the analyzer, we were searching for syntax that looks like this. When we found a member access expression that accessed the empty property, we expected the accessed expression to be immutable array of something. And this syntax here is called a generic name syntax. And this is why here we are verifying that the accessed expression is of type generic name syntax. Now, the access expression in our case is not a generic name syntax, but another member access expression. And let me explain why. Okay, so this expression here, which is what the analyzer currently finds when we run the test, is a member access expression, this being the accessed member and this being the expression of the member access expression. And this itself is a member access expression, this being the member and this being the expression, and the same thing here. Okay, so what we can do, we can handle this case explicitly, right? We can handle the case where the accessed expression here is itself a member access expression, and to make sure that the accessed member is this and the accessed expression is this. But this approach has problems, because what if somebody decided to use the using alias directive feature of C#? That is, what if somebody did this? Here we can use the using alias directive feature to say that this IM here is an alias for the system.collections.immutable namespace, and then use it here. So the approach of trying all the different cases is a very hard approach. We can still of course parse the using directives here ourselves and figure out exactly what this IM means, but this is not the best approach to use, and this is actually where the semantic model can help. So what is the semantic model? You can think of a semantic model as an object that can answer semantic questions about a syntax tree. Let me show you an example. Okay. Here, instead of verifying that the accessed expression here is the generic name syntax and checking its name and the number of type arguments, I'm going to use the semantic model. So I can access the semantic model here using this context parameter. So context.semantic model gives me the semantic model object, and I'm going to ask it about the accessed expression. Okay, so what does the getSymbolInfo method do? You give this getSymbolInfo method an expression, and it potentially gives you back a symbol. So a symbol here can refer, for example, to a method or to a type or to a local variable. In our case, we expect to get back a type symbol. And this is why here I'm checking that the symbol returned is a type. And this INameType symbol interface indicates that the symbol is a named type. And here in the documentation it says represents a type other than an array, a pointer, or a type parameter. In our case, we are looking for the immutable array type, so we know it's not any of these things. So a base type of this INameType symbol is the iType symbol interface. And this iType symbol represents any type. But the reason I'm using INameType symbol is because I need to access the name of the symbol. And this is only available in the INameType symbol interface. So next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that this symbol is actually the immutable array type. Okay, so I'm going to check the name property to make sure that it's immutable array. I'm also going to check the number of type arguments. Okay, and now I need to make sure that this immutable array is actually the immutable array type in the system.collections.immutable namespace. I have just pasted some code that I prepared before, and let me show you what this code does. So here, after checking the name of the symbol and the number of type arguments, I use the containing namespace property to access the namespace of this symbol here. And I make sure that that namespace is called immutable, and then I check the containing namespace of that namespace and make sure that its name is collections. And then I check the containing namespace of that namespace to make sure it's called system. And then I check the namespace of that namespace to make sure it's the global namespace. And if all these conditions are met, we know for sure that this is actually the immutable array type. Okay, let me remove this code that was using the syntax tree. So let's try to run the test. Okay, now the test passes. Okay, so let's go back and do some refactoring. So this way of checking the full namespace is not the best way to do it. So I have prepared a method called getFullName. You give it a namespace symbol and it gives you back the full name of the namespace. And it does so by first checking if this is the global namespace, and it returns an empty string in this case. And then it checks if the parent namespace is the global namespace. In this case, it returns the namespace name. Otherwise, it uses recursion to get the name of the parent namespace, and then it adds a dot and the name of the namespace. So now, what I can do is, instead of doing all this, I can come here and say full name of namespace equals getFullName, and then give it the containing namespace. And if the full name is not system.collections.immutable, then I can return. Okay, let me remove all this code now. Okay, so this is much better. Okay, let's run the test to make sure everything is good. Okay, and it passes. Great. Okay, let me run all tests to make sure that we didn't break anything. Okay, all tests passed. Okay, let's add another test that uses the using alias directive feature. Okay. So I'm going to create a using alias directive for the immutable array of int type. So the line number where we expect to get a diagnostic is now 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. And let's run the test. Okay, the test passes. Okay. So to recap, the semantic model allows us to ask semantic questions about certain nodes in the syntax tree. For example, in this test, we ask the semantic model about the symbol that corresponds to this node here. And the semantic model is smart enough to detect that this is actually the immutable array of int type and not, for example, a local variable named im of int. There is more, of course, to the semantic model, and I'm going to be discussing examples in later videos. Okay, thanks for watching.